you come back with it.
Good morning. This is our Understanding the Individual Education Plan, part of our Caregiver Series, fall of 2015. Hello, my name is Barry Chlebnikow. I'm the Director of Education at the Virginia Institute of Autism. Let's begin by just saying out front that as parents, you are the primary educators for our children. I think this is most important for you to understand as we take a look at the individual education plan. So let's talk about the history of the IEP. Public Law 94-142 was passed in 1975 and was the first federal legislation that required public schools to develop individual education programs for all students with disabilities. Right now in the United States, amongst the 50.1 million children in public schools, 6.5 million of them have individual education plans. That's 13%. In all of our public schools, the federal law ensures that all students with disabilities have access to what's called a free and appropriate public education. The individualized education plan details how the public school program will differ for your student from his or her peers in the regular education program. The individualized education plan is an agreement between the public school district and the children's parents. You said we have somebody? Good morning. Is there somebody online with us? Oh, you can't hear. Well, I'm glad you're there. So who is on the IEP team? The individualized education plan is created by the student with a team of professionals, representatives from outside agencies, and the parents. And please recognize, as parents, you can invite professionals in the community who know your child, and they can be a part of the team as well. So we're going to take a look at each of the components in the individual education plan. These components are in all individual education plans, and they all must be included to have a complete plan. Participation page, there's a present level of performance, the annual goals and objectives, assessment participation, special education and related services, accommodations, transition plan and placement decision, and finally consent. So let's take a look at the participation page. The participation page is just that. It just indicates who is at the meeting. It does not give consent, and this is important. And parents, if somebody is not able to stay, you may excuse them from that meeting. The next section on the individual education plan is what is called the present level of performance. This section answers the question, where is the child at the beginning of the plan? Recent assessments that have been administered will be reviewed. Any progress in school may be indicated by recent grades, how they've done in their class. And then the IEP will address specific areas. What are the areas in the present level of performance that require special education? If the present level of performance has the assessment information in it, it will indicate your child's performance in the areas that the IEP will address. And clearly pay attention that the IEP will address how the child communicates, if there are challenging behaviors. Annual goals and objectives. Special education is just that. It's special. It goes beyond what a child would receive in the regular education program in order to succeed in school. Goal statements and objectives are provided to detail the outcomes for the child in the school program. These goals and objectives will detail where the child is not accessing the curriculum through the regular education program along with his or her peers. The goals and objectives will specify the setting and details, the measurement of the learning. Otherwise, they'll create what's called mastery criteria. And the goals can detail behavior reduction for challenging behaviors. You may find goals for your child to develop social skills, being more independent through self-help, or in specific academic content, such as reading and mathematics. Special education and related services. The individualized education plan will also detail how much time a child will be in special education program receiving the special education services. The plan will also detail what we call related service. Related services are things such as speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, counseling. Another section of the IEP are what we call accommodations. And here we're trying to address the issue of how does the curriculum or testing need to be altered or changed or modified for your child to succeed. Special education provides an opportunity for the public schools to do these modifications so that a child with a disability can succeed and grow. Especially now with our standards of learning program, the idea of testing becomes paramount. In public schools, in all of our public schools, all students have to take these tests and pass them in order to succeed and eventually earn a high school diploma. So we have what we call this testing accommodation, and it can impact your child's performance on these important tests. It provides them with a greater opportunity to succeed. So items like test items can be read aloud, how a calculator or manipulatives can be used, whether a child needs frequent breaks, do they need untimed testing, adaptive writing equipment, preferential seating. Accommodations can be given where a child takes a test all by themselves. So this is the accommodation section. Once a child reaches the age of 14 and has an IEP, it's a requirement in the law that we begin a transition plan. And here we're beginning to take a look at what will a child need to succeed at home, in his community, and school, especially after they graduate. These are the goals that can relate to daily living, job skills, post-secondary education, community living. And also, we can involve outside agencies. In Virginia, the Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services can work in collaboration with your school resources and begin to map out what programs need to be in place to improve the likelihood for employment, the quality of life, what security demands there may be, the independence for Virginians with a disability and their families. This is part of the goal of the Virginia Rehabilitative Services Program. So they're a key group to work with as your children reach 14 and older. Assessment participation really takes a look at, will the student participate in the standard district-wide assessments? Almost all of our school systems in Virginia now have standard tests that they give across the district. And so again, here we look at what needs to be done so that we can understand, is the child learning? How will the child be assessed? And here there's always a clear statement for how the child will participate in the standards of learning tests. We have standards of learning tests that all children take in the regular classroom, and our children with disabilities, by and large, will take those same tests. But then for a small group of children, especially those with extremely challenging learning issues, we have what's called the Virginia Alternative Assessment Program, or the VAP. And this is the test that most of the children at VIA participate in. Here we've taken those same standards of learning, the SOLs, and we've modified them in a way that they're they're called aligned standards. But it's really the same content area broken up in such a way that they can be delivered in a more systematic way to children, and they can be monitored in a more systematic way. You'll see children participating in the VAP, the Virginia Alternative Assessment Program, and again, that's what a lot of our children at VIA participate in. Finally, the IEP has to deal with placement. And here's where this term least restrictive environment comes up. Where can the student achieve these goals that we've set out in the individual education plan? Is it going to be primarily in the regular classroom? With just services coming into that classroom, consultative services to the teacher, or will the child need some kind of a pullout, maybe in combination with the regular education classrooms? And that's where we talk about resource models. It could be regular education with some what we call self-contained classroom. That's where like groups of children with disabilities maybe having an entire class period with the teacher around one content area. We have presently in public schools what are called separate public schools, and these are unusual, but some school systems have that, and you need to be aware of that, where the child is actually not in his regular school, but what's called the separate day school. It's run by the public school. Very similar to what we have in VIA, but ours is considered a separate private day school, and it's outside of public education. Gets more restrictive as we go to residential schooling, homebound, or hospitalization. So these are placement issues dealing with the least restrictive environment that every IEP must address. The last thing that you do as a parent with an individual education plan is provide consent. And this is where you decide as a parent, as the primary educator for your child, whether or not to accept the IEP, that you consent for these services to be delivered that's outside of the regular education in special education. Or if there's a change in the IEP, are you going to accept this change in the IEP? Again, you are the primary educator for your children. You decide whether or not to give permission for this individualized education program and any proposed changes by the school. If you do not agree, in the law, it states very clearly that the child stays put until resolution can be reached. That is, that if you don't give permission to implement an IEP, your child remains in the school in the present program that they're in until you and the school representative resolve all agreements. And there are arbitration ways that you work with the school. It doesn't have to be any kind of an adversarial role at all. But it's just that you as a parent are saying, I want my child to stay put here in the present program until we can resolve the issues that we have. Again, you are the primary educator for your children, and you have to take the lead on this. So questions that you should be thinking about and as you prepare for an individual IEP meeting, to ask. Ask of yourself, ask of the meeting, ask as you're going through the meeting. Have my concerns been documented and addressed? Prior to the IEP meeting, please write your concerns down. I know it's challenging to go in these meetings. You're often with a lot of school representatives. You may only know one or two of them. There may be language that they're using that you don't understand. But your concerns need to be addressed. I put this out there as something for you to think about how detailed is this individual education plan for your child. But if I moved, does this document contain all the information you would need to design a program in another school? If you feel good about that, then you've got a pretty detailed IEP. Because what you have to realize is when you move, your child's IEP moves with your child and you, and they're going to try to implement it in a new setting. So this isn't just a question that you would ask if you weren't, you weren't even considering moving. I would ask this question at the end of an IEP meeting in my own mind. Is this IEP portable? Could I carry it to another school? And they would know exactly how to work with my child. And then do you feel confident in the way progress will be measured? How are you going to know as a parent that your child is making progress on the goals that are in that IEP? And do you understand how often you're going to get a report? IEP goal attainment progress needs to be reported to you outside of the regular report cards that you receive on your children in school. And so there's going to be a more detailed report about the IEP goals. Do you understand that? And how often those you'll be reported to you, and what avenues you have to address issues if you're seeing information and you're saying, geez, my child's really not learning here. And then how do you ask those questions and get answers? Some things to keep in mind. You, as a parent, can request an IEP meeting at any time. There's no rules on this. If you have a concern, you can ask the school. I strongly suggest that you ask in writing because verbally things can get forgotten. Any IEP can be addended, or it's really not a word, I kind of made it up, but can be amended at any time. And I use the word addended because it's an addendum that's written for an IEP. As a member of the IEP team, you need to feel comfortable contributing and asking questions. And if that's not the case, bring that. I'm not feeling really good about this. I'm not understanding. I want to understand this. Help me out. And any IEP, it needs to be written in such a way that you see how it's individualized for your child. I got to tell you, a lot of these IEPs, as they're developed, a lot of goals and objectives. If you think about it, if a teacher has on their caseload 8, 10 kids to write IEPs for, if you're in a resource classroom, you could have 15, 18 IEPs, 20 IEPs to write. You end up using a lot of the same things between IEPs. So what you want to see is that they've, in a sense, chosen IEPs, tailored them, IEP goals, tailored them for your child, so you understand how it specifically addresses the needs of your child. An individual education plan is thus that. It needs to be individualized, and you should experience that. I want to thank you for your attention. I am always available to you at VIA to answer any questions that you may have. And thank you for your attention.